Hello off-grid fans, look at me in this winter wonderland. Anyway, today, well, I'm snowed in, stuck in this forest, doing some YouTubing. I thought today I would go through the different types of heater and the pros and cons, because nothing is a straight, this is the best way to heat. Everything has a pro and a con, and I've got experience of diesel heaters, gas heaters, wood burners, electric heaters. So those four things, and I may even make a passing mention to candles in plant pots and some physics behind why that is useless. But as I say, while I'm here, I'll put up on the screen now the basic pros and cons of of each of those heaters. And if you want to hear my explanation for each of those pros and cons, then hang around for the rest of the video. And just one thing extra, there won't be any affiliate links or anything to heaters, none of that shit on my channel. This is just my experience for you. So if you want to know how I've come up with these pros and cons, then hang around. We'll go into the van and discuss. And there is the van in this winter wonderland. Just been out for an hour with the dog. So yeah, time to do a YouTube video. Hi, I'm Kev, trying to live off-grid in my 1995 Mercedes motorhome. 6 solar panels, over 2 kilowatts, charging this awesome self-built 12 kilowatt hour lithium pack. I'm building mountain bike trails, I'm running mountain bike events, Freya's along for the ride. I'm solar powering my life while I'm off-grid and working hard. So look at the nice backdrop I've got you. Anyway, pros and cons of the different types of heaters according to me. And if these are different for you, fair enough. If you don't agree with what I say, if a certain one is better for you because of availability of a fuel source or the way you live, all well and good. All I'm going to say is how I see it and what works for me. So first one, gas, particularly LPG. I have that. It is one of the more expensive ones to buy and set up, but it is one of the cheaper ones to run. So LPG readily available, although admittedly getting less and less available these days as LPG auto gas is removed from fuel stations and electric chargers are put in their place and the price of LPG is going up. But still, propane is available around the world and is a good source. If you buy gas from the refillable LPG, then it is much cheaper than buying Cala gas bottles. If you're going to pay a full price for a Cala gas bottle, then bear that in mind. That makes the LPG a lot more expensive. Whereas, I'm paying like 25 quid for 19 kilos of LPG, and if you went to Cala, that might be 75 quid. So do bear that in mind. Anyway, I'm rambling on, but that's what I do. I waffle. You're here to listen to me waffle. So cheap to run gas, really controllable on a thermostat, doesn't take any power to start it up like the diesel heaters do that we'll get onto, where they need a big rush of power to start the glow plug. And there's just a little fan. It's a very small amount of electric, but they do use some electric, these gas blow heaters, but very controllable. I use mine on a frost protection setting all winter, and that's brilliant. It means that my water won't freeze, that my batteries stay warm. So that, you know, I mean, I have, well, currently I've brought here with me 2 19 kilos and 1 32 kilo of propane, and I've swapped 1 bottle since I was here. But it wasn't that I've used 1 full one. I'd used 1 through the summer and then it ran out, so I've only done 1 swap by using gas in the morning to get everything heated up. So brilliant. So gas, that's the first one I've covered. As I say, relatively cheap to run if you're buying LPG. Not too noisy, just the fan noise, and but is more expensive than some of the other options, diesel heaters for example, to buy. So next up, oh, that's not a very good way to hold it. Next up, my favourite wood burner, but it's got a lot of cons as well. So it is the best heat for, especially when you consider controlling humidity and getting it over warm without feeling like you are spending too much on fuel and then having to crack a window or open a skylight or whatever to cool it down. But that's great for ventilation, and when you're a stinky bloke like me with a wet dog living in a van, then that ventilation, that overheating is brilliant. But it's not convenient. I enjoy the process of chopping wood, cleaning out the fire, building the fire, getting the fire at the temperature you want, especially because mine's on a stove, so I use it for cooking as well. I enjoy that, but it's not convenient. But it is brilliant, and when I'm on a day like today, when I'm in the van all day, then it's well worth it. Now you need a big fuel store. So I've one of them buckets on a day like today. That's a day's worth of wood for me, even as I say, using the LPG in the morning. And I've been here 5 weeks. I think I'm 3 chimney fulls of wood that I've been down to the forestry wood store to pick up and brought back up here. I've got my axes, I've got my chopping block. There's a lot of faff with a wood burner, but it's good faff. I enjoy it, but it is faff. If you're moving around a lot, the amount of wood that you need to carry would be ridiculous. So it's really, if you're in a fixed location, then yeah, you can have a wood pile, you can have somewhere to chop it, and you can do all of that. But I definitely, if you're moving around, the amount of wood you have to carry, it makes it ridiculous. So anyway, that's another of its cons, the big fuel store. The other is the space. It takes up quite a bit of space. I mean, mine's quite small. Here it is. It's got the oven, 10" by 6" actual burner here. But in summer that comes out, and even actually when I'm travelling, it comes out, goes in summer. That's where my induction hob and my electric kettle and whatever sit. So if you are building one into a van, then you have that wasted space in summer. So you've got to factor that in, that space. I mean, I've got a lot of space, but I still quite like the fact that I can take it out and just put it in for when I need it. And the other thing is, and again, mine's on the lighter side, but some of these, you know, sort of 4 kilowatt for a narrowboat style wood burners, then they are very heavy. So you need to get them well bolted down. If you crash, you don't want a wood burner flying around and hitting you on the head. So you know, you've got to securely fit them and deal with the weight and deal with the space. So as much as I love my wood burner, those big fuel stores, inconvenience, wasted space, weight, all these things you need to think about. And now the big one, the one that everyone uses these days, a diesel heater. Now when I started van life a decade ago, everyone was on Propex gas heaters in your T4 little £600 blue box of heat connect to your propane, and that's what everyone had, because the diesel heaters from Espacha and stuff, they were more like £1,000. But with the advent of cheap Chinese diesel heaters costing 100, 200 quid rather than £1,000, they are the new go-to for everyone, and that's the reason that they're cheap to buy. They give out plenty of heat, and the fuel is readily available. You know, I was saying LPG is getting less available, but there's not that issue with diesel. Diesel is well available. It will run on other fuels. I'm not really going to cover that, but you know, it's a liquid fuel you can just go out, get, pour in, and for, you know, compared to the wood, where if you need a month's worth of wood compared to a month's worth of diesel, and you can probably have a month's worth of diesel in a few jerry cans in what would take up the space of a week's worth of wood. So, you know, it is definitely more possible, and a lot of people plumb the diesel heaters into their diesel tanks of their camper van, so they're getting a massive a massive tank of fuel. Obviously that means you then can't use red diesel or other fuels, so some people keep them separate, but there you are. But the big annoying thing with a diesel heater, well, there's two really. One is the constant clicking of the pump, which some people, it drives them insane. Other people, doesn't matter at all. So if you're the sort of person that's going to get annoyed with a constantly clicking diesel pump, then a diesel heater might not be for you, or you might need to spend extra on one of the quieter pumps and then wrap it in soundproofing and bungee it under your van in another round of soundproofing or whatever. There's plenty of videos on YouTube about how to quiet down a diesel heater, but go and watch them if you want. But that's the pro. That's the con, should I say? The noisy pump, and then the other thing, and particularly people with weak 12-volt systems and lead acid batteries in winter, where you need the heat the most and there's the least solar, is the amount of power it takes to start it up. And this is another reason that I don't particularly like a diesel heater, because the setup, and I know you can get different controllers that get round these issues, and my power system wouldn't have any issue in starting it up, but this is not just me, this is pros and cons for everyone. So they start up with a lot of power, which also means when they get to temperature they click off, but they don't click off and stop, so they don't have to start again. If the temperature drops, they just drop down to a low setting and just tick away. So that can get too hot, which then might mean that you get the advantages of a wood burner, where you're taking cracking a window or opening the skylight. Look at that snow. Oh yeah. And again, helping you control humidity in the winter. So you've got that slight incontrollability where it will only drop to a minimum, whereas the gas will turn completely off. But going back to the gas, another con of the gas, particularly with my thermostat, is it turns off and it's just a touch on the warm side, and then it drops to it's just a touch on the cold side before the thermostat kicks it back on, and you spend not a lot of time at the perfect temperature. And I think it's more noticed when it cycles between slightly hotter and slightly colder, you know, with the wood burner, It tends to be always just a bit warm, and but it's steady. With the cycling with the gas on the thermostat, maybe I could just get a better thermostat. But the difference, it might only be a couple of degrees, but you sort of notice it's like, oh, just a little bit of chill, and then it'll kick back on to heat up. So with the diesel heaters, they say they drop down to a minimum. Now, diesel heaters, particularly the Chinese ones, they're a bit variable in quality, and then the controllers aren't great, and they might not run at the right air fuel ratio, and they might soot up. So a lot of people have errors you'll see on the forums all the time. Oh, I've got an EO8 error, whether it's priming or it's sooting up or whatever. But they are simple. If you're the sort of person that just goes, it's not working, I'll just strip it down, clean it, put it back together, reprime it. I've changed my fuel line that came with it, and all these things, and research and deal with the issues of a diesel heater. Then they're the most common for a reason, because they are more suitable for everyone, but they are not perfect, and they are not the best for everyone. So just bear that in mind. But they are good, they are the most common, and they are that for a reason. So the second to the last that I'm going to deal with is electric. Now, I have electric heating, I have electric blow heater, I have electric oil-filled radiators. And if you've got a plug-in, depending what you're paying for the electric, whether it's included in your site, no matter what you use or whatever, then electric heating is nice. It is quiet, silent in most cases, not with the fan heater, and not if you've got a little oil-filled radiator like I have that clicks on and off with its thermostat with a definite click. But I've got another one that doesn't click, it just sort of stays on a low 600 watt setting. And yeah, if you've got an electric mains hookup, definitely consider a little oil-filled radiator. Might not chuck out the most heat, but for just having on out, well, you get a 2 kilowatt one, it'll chuck out 2 kilowatts of heat. I tend to use I have a little 700 watter that'll click on and off, even on maximum oil temperature, and that'll keep the chill off this big van. Just leave it on 24/7. I have a bigger one that I've occasionally borrowed from my dad. It's 2 kilowatts, but on low it's a 600 watt. But because it's bigger, the oil doesn't overheat, so it keeps that 600 watt constantly, and because it's bigger, it gets rid of that heat, so there's no clicking on and off, and it is truly silent, and that is fantastic. I know I might seem like a little bit nitpicking, picking on a clicking of a thermostat for an oil-filled radiator when it's going on and off, but it's the only thing that I really don't like about it. If you've got a mains plug-in, and these radiators, my little one was 35 quid, the bigger one might have been 50 quid. They're not expensive, they are quite cheap to run, they are silent, they are controllable, they are easy. If you've got a plug-in, use an electric oil-filled radiator. It's what it is. Obviously, if you're paying a lot for the plug-in electric for some reason, then obviously factor that in. But generally, if you've got plug-in, you'll not get a cheaper way to heat a van than an electric oil-filled radiator, or even a fan heater. But the fan heaters are noisier. The oil-filled radiators, they are better. There is a big rise these days in infrared electric panels, and I have thought about putting a 300 watt infrared electric panel on the roof of my van, so that it basically shines down onto where I sit underneath, and that might be a really good thing. But I've not tried it yet, no experience. I have done some reading. Check out IR panels on the internet. You'll see lots of comparisons between heat pumps and infrared panels, because they're the sort of two ways to change your house to an electrically heated house rather than a fossil fuel heated house. And these days. So there's loads of stuff on the internet between comparing those two. So it might be that infrared panels are brilliant for a van. We just don't know it yet. And then lastly, candles. Candles. Now you can Google it and a candle will put out anywhere between 10 and 50 watts, depending who you want to believe and how big the candle is and how big the flame is. These sort of heaters, gas heater that I've got, 5 kilowatt, most of them 2 kilowatt as a minimum. Wood burner, most of the wood burners for a van are 4 kilowatts, 6 kilowatts. Diesel heaters, 2, 5, 8 kilowatts. Electric heaters, you know, a few hundred watts for the small oil-filled radiators, up to a couple of kilowatts. We're all talking kilowatts and hundreds of watts here. Candles, you can't get away with physics. You know, energy cannot be created or destroyed, only changed from one form into another. The amount of energy stored in the candle is not a lot, even if you've got lots of them. Putting a bloody plant pot over the top doesn't give it any more heat. It might just stop that heat going straight up to the top of the van and heating the pot. But to be honest, you're probably better sticking your phone on a fire screensaver and watching the flames tick with no heat coming out to trick your brain into thinking there's some heat. And I think that's what it is with the candles. They don't give out a lot of heat. I don't care who you are. Physics, man. Physics. Deal with the physics. Yeah. Heat, joules, watts. You can't just pull them out your arse. They need to come from somewhere, whether that's burning wood, burning diesel, burning gas, or plugging into the electric. Yeah, a candle is decorative. It is not a heat source. It's also not a very clean source of heat. If you start putting 2 kilowatts of candles into your van, you will notice, you know, waxy shit on your roof and all sorts. So, you know, a candle is not a heat source. It's a decorative item. Don't be that idiot who thinks you can heat a van with a candle. Get a heater, sort yourself out. Anyway, we've waffled for about 30 minutes, but I did, before the the intro-y bit, after the first couple of minutes when I gave you a list just to look at of my pros and cons, we've now waffled and explained all of them. If it's been useful, thank you very much. Like, subscribe, all of that jazz. Cheers.